In April of 2022, Zephyr IV came out of the water for a couple of weeks, and after having her topsides beautifully polished and her bottom covered with anti-fouling, she was finally launched, ready for this season's sailing.
Well, here we are, first sail of the season on Easter Sunday. It's a lovely, lovely day. 10 to 12 knots of wind, maybe a bit more at occasions, and we're just going along the coast by Lyon, Solent.
Later in the day we had a bit more wind, and the new sails really came into their own as we sailed back along the Isle of Wight shore. We maintained well over 6 knots in complete comfort. I was well pleased, nearly a knot faster than last year.
It's Tuesday after Easter Monday, and we're leaving Portsmouth Harbour behind. Very, very little wind when we set out, but it's perking up a bit now. We've got 9 or 10 knots, and we're doing about 4 knots, maybe sometimes more. And we're hopefully going off to the Nab Tower. That's the general idea. This is one of the forts that protected Portsmouth Harbour during the last war. And over there you can see lots of ships, and they're probably waiting for tide or something before they come into the Solent. But the Nab Tower is over there somewhere. And Bill has just made me a cup of tea. What could be better? It's a lovely day out here, not too windy, just enough. There's Portsmouth, and coming round there's the other fort. So we're going between the two forts, out eastwards towards the Nab Tower. And Bill's just heating up the pasties. Hot Cornish pasty, what could be better? We're right on course now for the Nab Tower. It's dead ahead of us, way in the distance. Wind's behind us, so it gives me a chance to try out my new spinnaker pole, or booming out pole. This is one I made during the winter, a bit longer than the old one, and also considerably lighter. This is a good test for it, because there's always a possibility it might break, but it seems to be holding out at the moment. Well in sight now, we're beginning to pick up details. Can see the lights of the tower at the top. Just zoom in a bit so you can maybe see a bit more. At the moment, the boat's steering itself. The chart plotter is looking after the autopilot, and if I didn't do anything, we're going to bump into the Nab Tower. It's making a very good course. Very pleasant out here, quite warm, and Bill's there working really hard, as you can see, and there's the Isle of Wight, which we left behind some time ago, so very, very good. Getting closer now. Bill reckons we're about 7 minutes away. We'll just have to see. can see the waves breaking a little bit on the at the base of the tower.
The Nab Tower marks the start of the deep water big ship channel into the Solent. Prior to 1920, this position was marked with a light ship, but in 1920 a tower, originally intended to support anti-submarine netting, was floated out and positioned in place of the light ship. Much of the original tower gradually rusted away, and in 2015 the tower was re-engineered to what you see today. Note the depth, 74 feet. There's an awful lot of tower support down there under the water. There's plenty of information about the tower on the net. I'll put a link in this video's description so you can read some of it for yourself. With the tower behind us, we start a gentle sail back to Portsmouth and home. But before we made it to the Solent, we ran out of wind and motored in to the harbour entrance. A couple of days later, I was asked to help with a delivery job, bringing this 27-footer from Emsworth in Chichester Harbour back to Gosport. It was a miserable wet day, so I kept the video camera safe and dry below. Fortunately, a friend of Dean and Deborah took some snaps of us as we arrived back at the Royal Clarence Marina.
Today we're going out sailing on this Legend 27. Dean and Deborah have just recently bought it, and we're going out to do some motoring training and stuff like that. Lovely little boat and a lovely couple. So here we are motoring up Portsmouth Harbour. This is Dean and there's Debbie, and we're in this Legend 27, and I'm just looking through the windscreen, which is not all that good, and we're just practicing engine stuff at the moment.
These big yellow mooring buoys make excellent turning points, ideal to get a feel for manoeuvring the boat at close quarters. So we went round them in different directions and did figure of eights and all sorts of other things to get comfortable with the new boat.
And just go around his stern. That's it. You're not looking.
While we were practicing steering under power, this unusual looking boat motored past. Her name is Bole, and she's a junk yacht built in Singapore in 1948. She's recently been restored and is now run by a charitable trust to provide sailing for youngsters of all ages. A very unusual shape by modern standards, but really pretty.
This is Dean concentrating really hard because we're practicing picking up a buoy now. Notice he's not smiling at the moment. Oh, he is now. That's lovely.
Once we'd picked up a buoy, we had lunch and watched as Bole sailed past with her crew of youngsters.
Hello!
What a lovely way to be introduced to sailing. Ole is now based in Gosport, so we hope to see more of her in the future. After lunch we decided to poke our nose out into the Solent and try some gentle sailing.
Here we are, just coming out of Portsmouth entrance, a little bit bumpy. We just got the jib up at the moment, and there's about 14 knots of wind. Quite pleasant really. And Deb's steering, look, she's getting really good at getting these telltales in the right place. And Rob's playing action cameraman, so he's all right. So we're doing all right. It's a little bit lumpy, but it's okay. We're just motor sailing out of the entrance of Portsmouth Harbour. A little bit of tide against us, it's still flooding here. But we're keeping to the right-hand side of the channel, which is the small boat channel. If you go across the middle, they get cross with you because that's for the big boats, the ferries and all those sort of things. So I'm just following these other two boats out. A little bit of breeze, about 11 knots here, probably a little bit more out when we get out there. So looks like it could be a lovely day. Brilliant, brilliant weather. This is Hasler Marina over there. We have to stay fairly close to these red-topped beacon piles, and that indicates that we're in the small boat channel. It's a bit turbulent here because of the tide, but we've got the mainsail up, and that keeps us steady and helps us to get out. But in a few seconds, we'll be in the lee of the blockhouse here, Fort Blockhouse, and it'll go all over the place. So there you go, Portsmouth Harbour entrance. There's where we've just come from, and there's the Spinnaker Tower. Leaving Portsmouth Harbour yet again on a close reach, heading towards the island shore, going more or less south. And it's a lovely, lovely day. Nice bit of breeze, about 17 knots, which suits Zephyr IV extremely well. And the log's not working at the moment. I haven't got the transducer in. When we get clear of all this shipping and a bit more space, I'll go down below and put the log in, and we'll know exactly how fast we're going. But she's clipping along nicely. Really nice, nice day. We've got the tide against us, unfortunately, but I thought we'd head down towards Cowes, and if it gets really good, then we might get on down to Newtown Creek. But at the moment, we're just jogging along gently. I've just heaved to so that I can go down below and put the log transducer in its socket, because I had a dummy plug in there for the time being. So we've got the jib on the wrong side effectively, and the main on the other side, and the boat's doing 1.1 knots. Very comfortable, very slow oscillations. So heaving to. Not all boats will do it, but Zephyr IV seems quite happy to do it, and that means I could pop down below and sort out the log. So, got up a bit, so I've just put a reef in the mainsail. First time I've done it on this sail. We're still sailing a little bit shy of the wind at the moment. 5.3 knots, and it's quite comfortable anymore, and I'll start furling the jib. But heading towards the Isle of Wight at the moment. We've tacked heading across to the Isle of Wight at the moment. The wind's really picked up at the moment, and I've got a reef in and on both the jib and the mainsail, and we're doing, well, it's dropped off just for a few seconds, but it was 28 knots just now and we were doing nearly 6 knots. It's down to 25 knots now and we're doing 5, but it's quite gusty, and this is the first time I've really ever had to reef. Heading on back to Portsmouth now. Wind pretty much on the beam, very slightly behind us. Very pleasant, much nicer than going to Uward. 4.8 knots on the log at the moment, and wind speed, apparent wind is 13 knots. So it just didn't seem worthwhile bashing any more to windward, and I've got something to do at 4 o'clock and it's now 2:30, so we'll be back in Portsmouth by then, and I can do that. But isn't this lovely? Just jogging along with the wind on the beam. Having a really rolly trip into Portsmouth Harbour. That's No Man's Land Fort over there. That's Horse Sands Fort, and this is Spitbank Fort. And we're just now heading for the channel, the deep water channel that goes into Portsmouth Harbour itself. There's the actual harbour entrance with the Spinnaker Tower in view, and one of the Brittany ferries just coming out. But we're having to go across this area which is shallow here, and we're heading for the red buoy way in the distance. Once we get to that, then we can turn left and go off into the harbour.
A few days later, Dean and Debbie came down to their boat and we decided to go out on Zephyr IV just to give them a bit more experience of sailing. Again, one of their good friends took a few snaps of us motoring out of the marina. So that's what Zephyr IV looks like while we're underway.
Well, here we are, drifting out of Portsmouth Harbour. Dean's on the helm and Debbie's taking lots of photographs. she is, look. And I thought there might be a little bit more wind than this, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So we've got about 7 knots of wind, and nobody's moving particularly quickly, as you can see.
Fortunately, the wind filled in a bit later, and we were able to practice all sorts of manoeuvres and points of sailing before finally returning to Portsmouth Harbour. Once we were in, we saw exactly why there is a small boat channel, to keep us clear of these really big ships. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching to the end. Do please subscribe and be notified of future videos about Zephyr IV and her crew as we venture further afield in 2022.